Hi, everyone. My name is Regan, and I am an alcoholic.
Hi, Regan.
Hey, friends. Oh, yeah. Steve, thank you so much for asking me to come down here tonight and to spend some time with you guys. This is one heck of a meeting y'all got here in Southern Pines. I'm really excited to be here. And yeah, as Steve said, if I can, not take a drink tonight, I will have 9 years tomorrow, which makes my sobriety date October 18th, 2010. I do have a home group that I'm actually missing to be here with you guys. So if I wasn't here, I would be there. It's There's a Solution, which meets in Holly Springs at Holly Springs United Methodist Church. We meet Tuesday and Thursday nights at 7 p.m. So if you're ever up that way, we'd love to have you. I feel like I know Steve and I see some other familiar faces too. Definitely yours. Let's see. Goodness. If nothing else, I just, like Steve said, just tell the truth. That's like my number one goal in life these days. Like if I can just stay honest, like no matter what it looks like, at the end I know that, God's going to be there with me hand in hand, despite what it might look like on the outside. So that's what I'm going to try to do is just give you guys, the honest truth about, what alcoholism looked like in my life. Before I found the solution of Alcoholics Anonymous and before I, was able to have a relationship with my higher power, with God. So I got to tell you a little bit about the dirty so that you can hear, about, how life is for me today. There was nothing major that happened in my childhood that I can claim, was the reason that I came to drink alcoholically. Absolutely nothing. I'm a child of divorce, but then my parents got remarried and I had like 4 great parents. If you would have asked me back then, nothing ever looked the way I thought it should. I was never content with anything. I hear people talk about all the time, carrying that feeling through adolescence of, I just always was anxious. I always felt like I was getting punched in the gut, no matter where I was, unless I was alone. I would go to school, and I can remember, as early as like preschool and kindergarten, legitimately comparing myself to everyone, because being born with self-worth, like I just didn't have that. I do believe that feeling of inadequacy, not having that inner peace is eventually what made, drinking so easy to do. Because, from as early as I can remember, like I needed a drink is the best way I know to put it. Like I didn't, I just always needed something. I sought through, it's crazy because, when now as a sober person, and having been through the steps and, having, nurtured some of those relationships that had been broken for a long time, and like talking to my mom, when I tell her about how I felt as a child, she doesn't understand because she's like, but you seem so like you loved attention and you're always so lively and so spirited. And I'm like, that's because I was terrified inside. Like, I don't know how else to put it. But it also was created a really conducive environment for that like double life that I was going to come to learn to live as a young alcoholic. And anyways, that gave me a lot to drink over. So I took my first drink when I was 12, I believe. I was at my own house. I was with my brother, he's like 2.5 years older than me. And we were upstairs watching TV. He decided he's going to drink. He said he had something. If I wanted to drink, I could drink too. But if I wasn't, don't tell mom. And our parents are like downstairs just watching TV also. And so I was like, okay, cool. And I go downstairs and I get this really big, like, you go to like a baseball game and you get those like plastic souvenir cups. So that's like really big plastic cup. And I filled it up with Crystal Light. And I go upstairs and I'm baffled at how when my brother pours this alcohol into the cup, how I can't taste the Crystal Light at all. And then I come to understand that when you put Everclear in anything, you're gonna taste Everclear. So that's what we were drinking that night. We were sipping on some Everclear. And what can I tell you about that? I can tell you I smelt it from a mile away before I ever chose to consume it. I'm pretty sure everything burned before I ever consumed it. And then once I drank it, I remember like just kind of looking at my brother and he's like, it's not going to taste good. Just drink it as fast as you can. And so I did, and I'm like, okay, this is what people do. Like it doesn't matter how it tastes. Like we're not here to enjoy a nice beverage with each other tonight. Like we're drinking. I cannot remember, I don't remember having any consequences. I don't remember anything from that night, to be honest with you. I can guarantee you I probably just passed out, like almost immediately somewhere. Parents never found out, never got in trouble. I don't even remember waking up the next day and having this like overpowering hangover or like feeling terrible. I just went on with my life. And, but I instantly, from that night and from that experience, became an opportunistic alcoholic. If and when the opportunity to drink ever presented itself, I did it. And it wasn't about it being the perfect timing. It wasn't about making plans to then do it. If it came across my path, I drank. So that looks like me being 12 years old, like instead of like sitting in the gym and participating in PE, I'm like sitting in the bleachers drinking my big thermos of like boxed wine that I stole from my parents. They were just for the next few years and up until I came here and got sober, there was just never a bad time to drink for me. I don't know one time that I was ever presented with the opportunity and stopped long enough to think to myself, Regan, this probably isn't a great idea. You probably have other things that you need to be doing right now and other responsibilities and people who are counting on, like, I never had that. I guess it's called a conscience. It's like I just didn't have it. And especially once I had drank alcohol and I came to, that first night I didn't have that like overwhelming spiritual experience that I hear a lot of people talk about, when they drink alcohol and all their problems just melt away. But for me, like the mental obsession of the drink was absolutely there from the first drink that I took. It's all I could think about. All my plans started to revolve around drinking. And I'm 12. So, how that looks over the next few years, another thing I have to mention is, like, I grew up dancing. And I was at the dance studio 3 to 4 nights a week, plus weekends, plus traveling for competitions and performances. I mean, it truly, for me, was a really big passion. And it was the only thing that I could imagine myself doing when I got older. I didn't really care about academics. I could always get by. But, like, this is what I wanted to be when I grew up. And that's important because, at the age of 15, when for my 10th grade year, I had gotten accepted to go to North Carolina School of the Arts for their modern program, which was a really big deal. I mean, they accept like 2 or 3 10th graders out of the world. So It was a really big deal, but because I am who I am and I suffer from this like spiritual malady where I have no self-worth and all I know to do to try to find my place in this world is to compare myself to you, and I'm either better than you or I can't come close to you and I'm terrified of you. And that's a really not great place to be when you're like living on your own on a college campus at the age of 15 at school with a bunch of college students. I was in classes with college students, like it was all intermingled, and I quickly sized myself up to this place where it was like, if I can't be the best, I'm just not going to try very hard. But one thing I knew I could be the best at was getting in trouble or doing things that should get you in trouble. And I did that very well. And, within, there's 1 month left of 10th grade at School of the Arts. And I find myself sitting in a meeting after having been suspended for a week because for the third time I'd been caught drinking and sneaking off of the high school campus. And they'd had enough of me and my shenanigans. And everyone cried. My mom cried, and my stepdad cried, and begged the dean of dance, the dean of academics, the dean of all the deans to please just let me finish 10th grade. Please don't kick our daughter out because then she'll have to repeat the 10th grade. Can we find a way to, restrict her so that she can finish this last month of school and just, we'll be out of your hair. And they agreed to that. And I remember just being like completely heartbroken, but also completely resentful because all I could think of is, everyone else is doing what I'm doing. Why am I the only one who's getting all these consequences? And it took me getting sober, and working through these 12 steps to come to really see the truth of my drinking and to learn that no, I kind of was in a league of my own as far as that was concerned. Like everyone else was not doing what I was doing. Everyone else was doing what they were supposed to be doing and focusing on what they were supposed to be focusing on. And the only thing that had become important to me was drinking. And I didn't get invited back the next year, and I was shocked. I was genuinely holding on to a prayer that I would get on the last day of school, that I would get this letter saying, we actually really think you're incredible and we're inviting you back next year. But that didn't happen. And the reason why I share that story is because in my sobriety, that was the turning point for me. Because at the age of 15, I literally gave my biggest passion in life over to alcohol. And that's really sad. I was 15, So from that point on, over the next few years, I would just continue down the same downward spiral that I had been going at the school. I was incredibly resentful now. I felt completely hopeless. I had no goals and ambitions in my life. And so I just did whatever I wanted to do, whenever I wanted to do it, without any regard to who I hurt, or who I would take advantage of. Within that year, so middle of my 11th grade year, my parents kicked me out of their house because they were tired of me driving their vehicles around without a license and putting thousands of miles on their cars. They kept saying things like, they could take our house from us. And I'm like, your house. I had things I had to do, and you won't let me get my license. So, just completely selfish and self-centered, to the core. And so I went to live with my dad. They offered me a clean slate. This is your chance. This is your chance to not have any consequences, no holds bar. We'll get you a car. You can get a job. You can get a phone. You just need to make good choices and you can have a good life here. And, I just did what I always do and take complete advantage of of that circumstance and took complete advantage of my parents' grace that they were trying to give me and stomped all over it and did what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. By this time, I'm definitely not going to school much. I'm hanging out with people from work. I worked at a Chili's Bar and Grill in Rock Hill, South Carolina. And that was like my life because I was a hostess, was not old enough to serve, but all the people that worked there were living the life that I could not wait to live, which was just go to work, sober or not, just depends, make some money, and then go out and drink and party and like do that, and like I couldn't wait to graduate high school so I could do that. That's all I aspired for. So, I ended up graduating. I had to pay to do makeup school so that I could graduate. And at that point, I tried to do 6 months of like, I'm just going to save money and see what happens with my life. And my parents had enough of that. So they offered to put me through barber school because my mom and my stepdad owned a salon, and did hair themselves. And so I agreed to that, and so now I had some direction, and surely some direction, and going to school, like I could make something of myself and like try to be like a real grown up. And I think halfway through barber school, my sickness, let me say this too, my sickness is like not judgmental at all. Like if you have anything that's gonna make me feel different, like I said, I've just never said no to anything. And so, halfway through barber school, I'm going to school, then I'm going to work at this bar at night. And, I developed this habit, which eventually one day just had me like not caring at all really anymore about anything to an extreme. Let's just say there ends up being a cop at my house, and maybe my stepdad called the cop, and there was enough stuff there that the cop surely could have, carried me to jail. But he said, it looks like you have people in your life that really care about you, and, you're young enough, like your life doesn't have to be ruined. Like I can take you to jail, or you could try to get yourself some help if you want to do that. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Like that sounds a lot better to me. And I didn't realize that he meant like right then. And he's like, well, let's find somewhere for you to call. Okay, Mr. Officer. And then my brother comes in randomly at some point, and then so looking back, I'm like, this is like some weird intervention moment in my life. I'm like, why is my brother here? It's really weird. But they made me call this this rehab intake lady, and she's asking me all these questions, and I'm on the phone like this, and I'm looking at Mr. Cop and looking at my mom and my stepdad, and they're all looking at me and listening to me talk to this woman. And so I'm lying to this woman about how severe everything is in my life, because I'll give you this much truth, but I'm not giving you the whole truth. No, I've never given anyone the whole truth. And she said that I sounded like I'd be a good candidate for an intensive outpatient rehab. And I remember thinking, do you know who I am? Do you know how hard I go? I had so much ego around the lifestyle that I was living, because again, at this point, this is my only identity. Is there's these other things barber school that I'm doing, but it's just so that I can keep people out of my life enough that I can focus on doing what I love, which is drinking. And anyway, so I start this program, and the whole time, by the time I get done with that program, I mean, I've not failed or not passed breathalyzers. I've had bad pee tests, the whole time. And I would cry, and I would say how sorry I was, and please don't kick me out of the program, but I understand if you need to. And they're like, no, you keep coming back. We believe in you. And I'm like, yes, because I need my parents to believe that you believe in me so that I can keep going. In my last day, I was literally not a sober person. And the guy in front of me, let me go back. I struggled really hard at this point. I'm 18 years old, and I'm sitting in this room for a lot of time, for a lot of days, with these people who are losing their children, who are, have like threats of them losing like their right to practice law. I had homeless women and homeless men. Like, it was just this group of people that, like, in my mind, I'm like, these people are sick. Like, these people really have problems. Like, I'm just young, doing what young people do, and other people just don't seem to understand that. I learned a lot. I got an education about, what alcoholism looked like, and definitely knew that I had some changes I probably needed to make in my life, but I wasn't ready. And I wasn't there of my own accord either, which, for me, I mean, if I didn't want this thing, I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get it because somebody else wants it enough for me. And I had plenty of people in my life who wanted it enough for me. They were tired of me hurting them. They were tired of me lying. They were tired of me stealing. And they loved me very much. So I'm sure that all those people, if they could have, shoved it down my throat and had me get the message, like, then it would have worked, but it didn't, because I didn't want it. I went about that for a lot more years. What did I do? I moved to Big Stone Gap, Virginia for a little bit, thinking that if I could just get out of, Charlotte, North Carolina, then surely, if I go to the middle of nowhere, which is Big Stone Gap, Virginia, that I can't possibly get into trouble there. And within 2 months, I'm knocked up by the local drug dealer who's not even good at his job. Because he's, I end up 7 months pregnant. He's like stealing checks out of my checkbook and cashing them at the gas station there, because they let you do that there. And I'm just like completely out of answers. When I moved there, I truly had a resolve that I wanted to live a different life, and that I wanted to be able to make better choices for myself. And that was the best I could do. You know what I mean? Like, when left to my own accord, like, I'm going to end up knocked up by a really crappy drug dealer. Like, it's bad. And it's really sad because I was terrified. There was a shred of me, I think, that hoped and prayed that, this is it, Regan. You're about to have a kid. Like, this is a whole nother level of responsibility. You've never had this before. You're not really going to have a choice to live the life that you've been living. So, this is it. This will be the thing that gets me straight. And, once she comes, things will be good. And that just didn't happen. It is so truly by God's grace that baby girl, she's perfect. She's perfect in every way that a child can be perfect. And she shouldn't be. Because I struggled to stay sober during that pregnancy. And, certainly afterwards, thank God my parents were there. I owe them her life, pretty much. They, excuse me, I lived with them for the first year of her life. And, I kind of kept it together for about a month and a half. But then I started to realize that I probably shouldn't still be like feeding her, and drinking boxed wine. Cause now I'm back to like stealing my mom's boxed wine, because I'm the same drunk at 21 with a kid as I was at the age of 13. I haven't changed. Nothing's changed. Everything halted because I started using alcohol as my solution for everything. I never had to walk through anything completely painful because I made sure to get good and drunk before I had to deal with it. So, what did I do? Like what continued to happen was the more responsibility that I got in my life, the more I had to drink, So I get along. I did end up getting my barber's license. At this point, I'm working in a salon with my parents, and I start working for a hair product company, and I'm teaching, I'm doing education, and I'm doing hair shows, and I'm traveling a lot. And so that area of my life started looking pretty good. I was starting to have an income. I cannot say I was self-supporting because everything that came in went out immediately. But I did meet a nice man who I truly thought, I'm like, this is it for sure. Like, this is totally the answer to my problems because he's like 11 years older than me. He has a kid, but he has a house and a decent income, and he has a daughter, and everything that I had created in my head of what security would look like, or like what happiness was supposed to look like. It was this it was like from a teenage movie. You know what I mean? Like, oh, like a house and a husband and a kid and a dog and a job. And then how could you not be happy, And he was Australian, so that added to it a little bit. Let's be real. So anyways, and he was great. And he didn't seem to be bothered by my brand of crazy, which was like the icing on the cake. We did long distance for a year, and I ended up moving in with him, with my daughter, and that's how I ended up in Apex, North Carolina. That for a few years, my drinking just continued to get worse after that, mainly because I was in an environment now where someone cared about me enough to let me do what I wanted to do. And he wasn't my parent and didn't try to treat me like a parent. And it was just the perfect, codependent relationship. And it took me a while, again, when I got sober, to come to understand, why my alcoholism was able to grow in that relationship, and how my disease was masking all these other things that were going on that I was just too self-consumed and drunk to be able to even see, or to have any ounce of care. And the last 6 months, there's a lot that happened in between there. Like, I fell in a blackout. I had to get back surgery, almost immediately. The only way I even know what happened is because other people told me. So then I'm adding, pain pills on top of my disease. I mean, it's just, it was the perfect combination for what I wanted to have going on every day. And, come 6 months before I would find Alcoholics Anonymous, I had decided, I knew something was pulling me, and I wasn't interested in living life the way I had been. And so in my mind, I was like, I don't want to function having to take pain medicine all the time. What quality life is this? I'm done. I'm done with everything. The only thing I'm going to still do is drink. And within a month, if I'm awake, I'm drunk. So I'm no longer just drinking. I'm a true, honest, wake up or come to, pour a glass of vodka, maybe with a splash of sugar-free Red Bull, and drink it as fast as I can. And it didn't really matter if that was 8 in.the.morning before I took my child to school, or if that was when I came to at 4 p.m. from the last night. And, so many things happened over those 6 months. And it's just crazy because, of all the things that I did and that I put in my body to make myself feel different, and all the terrible habits that I came to have and addictions, like the one that literally made me want to die was when I just drank. And that was like, that was always like my ace in the hole. That was always my one that I kept here because, alcohol's legal and I'm of age and, it's not the problem. And when I took everything else away and it was the only thing there, I was this close to killing myself, and I was baffled. I was completely shocked because this was genuinely like, I had a desire to have a better life and I wanted a better life. So, there were so many years of not caring and not wanting that. And when something happened in my life where I felt compelled to want to try to have a better life, that drink became harder and harder to do, but also harder and harder to put down. Like, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. I really was hopeless. I'd started going to therapy and then I was drinking more because she's having me talk about all this stuff. But, and then like, okay, I'll see you next week. Like, what? So I'm talking about all this stuff and like, I have no solution but to drink. So now I'm drinking before I go to therapy because I know what's coming. And like, I had a God honest, true, like Bill Wilson, like white light experience. And, this is when I was still drinking and it's a beautiful story. If anyone's interested, I can tell you later, but, it was something that happened that I knew in that moment. I'm like, it's God. God is the solution to all of my problems. So I'm gonna go to church. And I had experience, like I had a belief in God. I had a belief that there is a God. I had even tried to like go to youth group. I was the girl that would like go on mission trips and like sneak off and smoke cigarettes and kiss boys. So, like, I didn't, even though I heard things, like I never truly like tried to invest in nurturing a relationship with God. I didn't know what that looked like. I knew what that looked like, but that was never what I wanted to look like. So some of that background was there. And when this happened, like I was, for the first time, like I had hope that things could be different. And, we're just a month before that, like I had started like self-harm things, which was completely, I think that was what really scared me, is because like I would just get drunk and I would just be in so much pain and so much internal pain that like it had to come out. And it's so sad for me now and crazy for me then, because like I was so vain and like so just, like I said, selfish and self-centered, that like the thought that I would ever even turn to something like that just goes to show like how far removed I was from being like a human being on this earth. Like I was now just this shell of a person that was just like empty inside. And so this light, like this moment, gave me hope. And so I went home and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to church. And I would go to church. I would sometimes muscle a few days of not drinking, and then I would go to church, and then I would come home and drink. And that's when I reached a whole new level of hopelessness, because I wanted to have a relationship with God, and I wanted to be a sober person, and I was doing the only thing that I knew to do, and trying to go to church, and trying was getting me drunk every time. It took, at this point I had accepted hopelessness. And I had a friend who, lived a life that was very, very similar to mine for a long time. And, this roundabout way, like I ended up at a meeting with her to support her picking up a 30-day chip. I was curious and I was intrigued because this was a woman whose life mirrored mine almost to the T. Like, had a child young, had all the relocating and like just very colorful history like me. And here she was picking up 30 days sober. Like, how I can't really put together like 3 days, and so then, I went to that meeting with her, and then I cried for 2 hours. That's all I remember. And she convinced me to come to a meeting with her the next day, and I went, and I picked up a white chip, and I didn't really know what I was doing when I did that. This was in Charlotte, and I'm living in Apex, so I'm like, well, what do I do now? And go back and go to meetings and get a sponsor and do all that. And I'm like, okay. And that was on a Sunday. And then I'm like, okay, I'll go to a meeting on Saturday. And in the meantime, I'll just Klonopin my way through that until the Klonopin runs out. And then I'm not going to take anything anymore. And that's what I did. And then come Sunday, when the Klonopin ran out, I drank. And I cried a lot. Because here I am with this resolve again, and how could I still drink? How could I, despite everything that's inside of me, wanting to be sober, going to great lengths, like one meeting a week, great lengths, still pick up a drink, even though I don't want to do it? And so I called numbers after I drank, and someone told me to go to a meeting the next day and call them when I was sober. And so I did. I went to a meeting the next day, and they asked me if I had a sponsor, and I said no, I hadn't really met that person. And they told me so kindly that anyone who raises their hand and says that they're available to be a sponsor has a better idea about staying sober than you do. And that hurt my feelings. But they were right. And so the next meeting I went to, I had been at work, and I'm like, I'm getting a sponsor tonight. And I got there with only 15 minutes left of the meeting, and the girl who was chairing the meeting looked like a good pick to me. I'm like, if she's sitting up there, she surely must be like the president. So she was going to be the one I asked. And, as soon as the meeting ended, I don't even think I asked her name. I just beelined to her and asked her if she would be my sponsor. And she said yes. And what a lovely God moment that was for me. I don't know that yes, I do. I know now, standing here, with whatever little, years of knowledge I have about AA now, that there are many people who could have taken me through these steps, and I gotten a good quality, sobriety and learned the way of Alcoholics Anonymous. But she was really special to me. She was everything. Oh gosh, I'm gonna do it. I spoke at Principles last week, and I cried the whole time. So this is a treat for you guys. I'm not crying tonight. She was perfect for me. She wasn't afraid to be honest with me about, and I brought everything to this woman because I was terrified. I was, for the first time in my life, I was scared enough about losing my life to alcoholism because that's the direction I was going. And I had this much hope that life could be different. But 1,000 reasons to get sober. At 3 months, I had to pick up another white chip. I had been going to 2 meetings a week. Or 2 meetings a week, shame on me. No, I'm sorry. I'd been going to 2 meetings a day. I had started working the steps with my sponsor. I was calling her every day. I was starting to pray. My prayers in the beginning were, God grant me the serenity. And just the simple prayers that I learned here that I could hold on to, those are the things that literally got me through the day to begin with. And, at 3 months sober, I'm feeling good, and, I'm starting to get this thing, and my ego is feeling real proud of itself. And And I went on one weekend with, old people in old places, and I made bad choices. And I came back, thank God. Like, I still wanted to be here. I still wanted to be sober more than anything in the world. And I didn't tell my sponsor for 2 or 3 weeks. And and I smoked a substance, so I didn't even pick up a drink. And so I was dealing with Angie, do I have to pick up a white chip? I didn't drink, trying so hard to hold on to whatever little piece of dignity I'd created in that 3 months. And I'm pretty sure what she said to me was, Regan, this is really between you and God. And then I just died inside because I knew what I had to do, and I share that because, I feel like that is exactly what had to happen in my story, in my life, to truly get to a place where I could practice some humility, get on my knees, and beg God for help. And from that moment on, I went to every meeting that I'd been going to. I cried my eyes out. I told them, that I hadn't been honest and that I had to pick up a white chip, and where I thought the shame and the guilt and the disappointment that I was putting on myself, I was certain that that's what I was going to get from you guys. Instead I got people laughed at me and smiled and hugged me and told me that it was okay and that they're just really happy that I made it back, and I love that, because you stay here long enough, and there's so many of us that don't make it back, and there's so many of us that don't even get to that don't get to keep their life because alcoholism took that from them. And I don't know why that isn't what my story is, but for whatever reason, God provided this opportunity for me to be able to have a sober life. Over the years, eventually I got through the steps, and, I was in that relationship. And literally, I'll have 9 years tomorrow, and about 2 months ago, when I was working with my new sponsor, I think for the first time I had this realization that had I not come in that relationship that I was in, because I stuck with the women and my focus was on getting sober, and I don't know how young single men and women do it, right? If you're anything like me, it would have just been really, really difficult to focus, I think. And so I don't know that I would have been able to get sober personally had I not been able to be in that safe place for the first 1.5 years of my sobriety. And so I feel like I owe a lot of that, to my ex. And at 1.5 years sober, I got to this place where I knew God was calling me somewhere else. I had worked so hard doing these steps and getting honest, and making amends, coming to find out who I truly was as a person versus who I thought I was, or coming to learn that my intentions meant nothing and that my actions were everything, and learning how to live that life of action and doing it hand in hand with my Creator, not just pausing when agitated like the book mentions, but pausing for everything and allowing God an opportunity to intervene between my thoughts and my actions. It's hard work. It's harder work today, I think, than when that desperation was there at the drink. But I did it and got through the steps, and through doing that, I came to realize that God had me going somewhere else in my life than the relationship that I was in. And, we were able to walk away from that, and it wasn't ugly, and nobody had to be harmed, and it was beautiful. And that was, I feel like, the ultimate time when I came to understand what it was to turn my life over to God, truly. because I didn't have a place to live. I didn't have a whole lot of money. I'd become really reliant upon this relationship, and I was truly stepping out in faith that God wouldn't call me to do something if he wasn't going to see me through it. And so I did that, and I left, and I took my daughter, and I took the clothes that we, like what we moved into that relationship with, which was our clothes, and I moved out with that. And women in this program gave me shelter. And then eventually, when I got an apartment of my own for the first time in my whole life, women in this program gave me furniture. The men of this program helped move it into my apartment. We were always fed, like we were just always taken care of. And that's been my life in Alcoholics Anonymous ever since then. I've never needed anything. I've never, I've just been able to allow you guys to help me, which is I think honestly, probably what was the hardest thing for me, and what has come to be the thing that brings me closer to God is being able to ask for help from other from anyone, honestly, but to be able to be vulnerable enough to admit that I need help and asking for it, and then letting people help. Today I have relationships that aren't fair weather friends, you know what I mean? Like the relationships I have in my life today, some from the past that have been rekindled as a result of the steps, and some of the new ones. Like my whole life is Alcoholics Anonymous. I married an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous against my better judgment, because I was a big non-fan of relationships in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that just goes to show, what happens when I try to have a firm idea about anything in life. What I've come to know at almost 9 years sober is that, for everything that I think I know nothing. And I try to be really okay with that today. To remember where my feet are and to be present in every moment that's given to me, to be grateful for every moment, even especially the hard ones. The hard ones are more painful than anything I ever did when I was drinking. We don't have an escape anymore, but we get to walk through it with God. And every single time I've come to something that I thought was hard or difficult, now I can't even hardly develop a memory about it, because God just has a way of taking care of it. Through sponsoring other women, allowing a lady to still sponsor me. Somehow I'm able to show up today as a sponsor, a member of a home group, an active member of a home group, a mother to 4, not a dozen. But I get to be a mother, like a present, sober, loving, patient mother to 4 kids. That is God, because it's not me. Before I cry too much, I'll just be done. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity to be here, and yeah, that's it.